recording, and then share. So the topic for today is kind of relevant to the discussions that we're just having. Time management. How exciting to manage time. So when you think about time management, what would you say are the challenges around, you all have so much work to do, right? You're constantly having to react all the time to the pressures of work. So what do you physically have as the challenges around managing your time?
Like how we manage our time?
Yeah. What are the challenges you face when managing your time?
For me, it's like putting like too much for myself, like overestimating myself, and then I basically set myself up for a failure because I put too many tasks in one day, and then I constantly feel like I'm behind everything. So when I start putting less tasks, I feel more successful, but I'm still behind, but I feel more successful. Yeah.
Good, great input, absolutely.
I don't know, from my side, I need to set more like specific goals and actually respect those goals and deadlines altogether. Sometimes I feel like I'm given too much freedom to move the deadlines, but I should really, stick to one deadline, get the task done, and then continue to the next task. So it's always been like a challenge for me.
Good. Anything else?
Sorry. Yeah, one other big problem I have is I can't do baby steps. I always try to remind myself like to take things like step by step, because I always have the big picture and I don't know how to get to it, and it's frustrating, and I don't have like the patience to go step by step. So yeah, I mean to like work on smaller tasks before I like complete something bigger. So that's like also a struggle.
Yeah. Good. Any others?
So I think my problem on time management is that I accept tasks and I tend to take responsibility, but then it ends up being a lot of things, and then I work also like long hours, and I kind of don't really know when to stop. I think it's also unhealthy to think you need to fulfill everything that they always ask you to do, right? So it's more like not knowing how to say no. In the actual really time management. Yeah.
Absolutely. All of those big challenges, and sometimes that also plays then to remember these communication preferences and work preferences, the creative, the procedural, the interpersonal, and the logical as well. And sometimes the change of the time management challenges can relate very much to also the preferences as well. So, for creative preference that's often big picture focused, for example, do struggle then with taking things step by step, because that's very procedural in nature. See what I mean? So actually some of the challenges can relate to just our natural work preferences and communication styles. So that's one consideration to think of. However, there are always some common topics, especially for the roles that you're in, and that is the challenge of saying no, right? You get more and more and more activities. You're in consulting or you're running projects. So often it's very difficult to say no, because there is an expectation that you do a lot of work, right? And that more work comes, and then problems come up, and then you're also solving the problems constantly. So there is a challenge of capacity, absolutely, always. And in a strange way, you know, I say this to some groups of people, I don't say it to all groups of people. I'll say it to you because I know from everything we've spoke about that you are a highly dedicated group of very talented people. Not everybody's like that, it has to be said. One of the challenges of being a highly dedicated, talented person is that you do good work. That good work gets recognized. So people give you more work to do. You do great at that. So people go, oh, they're really good. We'll give them more work to do. So you end up in that, it's a positive spiral, but it's a positive spiral that just brings more and more work. I know other groups of people which aren't, shall we say, so highly motivated or proactive and productive. And the odd thing is, because they're not as proactive and productive, they don't get so much done. And so people go, okay, well, we won't give them the work, but we'll give the very productive, highly talented people the work. So it's kind of this cycle that happens as well with wonderful people like yourselves. You just end up getting more and more work because you're good at it, right? Because you're good at it. It's a challenge. Can be a nice challenge, but it does add to the stress, right? So with those thoughts then, when we talk about time management, what are we actually managing? If we talk about time management, you know, when you think a bit about time management, you think about the challenges that you've just highlighted, but then a few comments around work preferences and this cycle of more and more work coming. What is it that we actually want to manage with time management? What are we trying to manage?
We're trying to manage ourselves.
Bingo. Yes, absolutely. At the end of the day, it's about managing ourselves. It's not necessarily about managing the time. I mean, it's important. The time is the important factor, but it's not necessarily that we're managing time. Time is kind of fixed. It's then about managing ourselves and how we kind of prioritize or say no, as Isabella mentioned, you know, how do we say no? How you manage the expectations, how you manage the workload coming into you. Yeah, it's about managing yourselves. You hit it straight away. Normally it takes about 20 minutes to get to that point, but you got it straight away. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, it's about managing yourselves. Good. Any other comments around that?
No.
No.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, you know. Yeah, go ahead. So somebody say something. I missed that.
No, I think I was breathing loudly.
Very good. So yeah, it is about managing ourselves. So the first thing that we have touched on before in another session was around procrastination. And you know, often you're all very highly productive. You get through a lot of work. Procrastination is still always there, and it's always one of these demons that everybody has, no matter where you are in society or in a business. We're always battling a certain level of procrastination because there are always tasks that, do we really want to do it? You know, there are much more fun things to go and do, all of that good stuff. So procrastination is actually just a natural psychological and immune response, because if we always work at the highest level all of the time, and we never take a break, we burn out. And so actually things like procrastination are a kind of inbuilt safety mechanism. You know, we're also built to focus on the things that interest us the most. And so when things are boring and don't interest us, then our procrastination monkey kicks in, you know, as well. You know, we like to focus on the things that interest us. So there's actually a very human psychology and behavioral reaction around procrastination. And sometimes that's higher in certain people, sometimes it's low. But there's always this balance then between what our procrastination behavior, our procrastination monkey wants us to do, go and have fun, go and eat some chocolate, go and watch Netflix, go and do other stuff. And then the other side is the panic monkey, is that the pressure that we apply to ourselves in our heads. Again, it's the psychology of panic, that is time bound, and at a certain moment in time, often when it's too late, our panic monkey wakes up, starts shouting in our ear, and then we get the motivation to go and do something. So this can, and I have seen it, I've coached many other people that really struggle with things like procrastination. It can have a significant effect then on managing ourselves, you know, back to exactly the point, managing ourselves. Now, even with the most boring tasks, there is a way to overcome it, and there's a very simple way. And I mean, there is a lot of deep psychology behind this. But Mel Robbins was one of the few that managed to kind of crystallize the behavior, overcoming the behavior, in a very simple process. And she has the process, just says, look, if in the moment you think, oh, I don't want to do that, or in the moment you think, oh, that's a great idea, but I just can't, you know, work on it now. Well, that's a great idea, I'll leave it till later. Then in that moment, learning to literally stop yourself and even say out loud, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I'm going to go and do it. That has a very psychological response of breaking the procrastination monkey and the adrenaline and stuff that's going on in your brain and all that kind of stuff. It stops that, allows you to oxygenate, which is also an important part of the physical psychology of that, and then can put yourself into motion. So fantastic YouTube's online, Mel Robbins. She has a massive following, 5 million followers, that kind of stuff on YouTube. Her book is a good book. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is her book, the first book. Very worth, you know, going and get the book or just watching some of her YouTubes. They're very insightful and give good inspiration to overcome procrastination at any level. Even if you only procrastinate on very small things, it's a very helpful way of overcoming procrastination. Makes sense? Reactions, thoughts? Have you come across Mel Robbins before? You know, this kind of thing around procrastination?
I think I'm a big procrastinator on some aspects of my life. I mean, specific ones. There are some things I say I'm going to do, but I just kind of let it there, you know, and I put some reminders and I just postpone the reminders, but other things I just get it done. I don't know Mel Robbins, but I consider myself a procrastinator in some areas of my life.
Yeah, not often it is. So for me, my big one, which I'm even struggling with today, tax return. I have like a mental block on tax return, and I procrastinate and it's now September and I was supposed to do it in January and I still haven't done it. So sometimes it's a certain topic that, you know, a certain area of life, like you say, that there's more procrastination than others.
Well, I had the similar thing with taxes, but I think it was related to fear, because I am afraid of like the tax community. So sometimes I think I procrastinate something that I'm just afraid to fail, or like I get anxiety just thinking about it. So I'm trying now to relate this to maybe that and how I can solve those things, but I haven't heard about Mel Robbins also.
Yeah, look her up, because especially on those items that there's anxiety around, she has a lot of examples around that. Yeah, she touches on that a lot in her book as well, around kind of anxiety, just scared of doing something, you should do it, and it might even be good for you, but there's the fear of doing things like, getting up and doing a presentation, for example. Not everybody is very comfortable with that kind of stuff, but often they know it might be good for their career, it's just scared of doing it. And again, all of this is natural. There's no right or wrong with the whole procrastination thing. It is really a built-in psychology into the human being, and it's there originally to protect us, so it's really deeply built in. But learning how to manage it, overcome it in certain times can, really help. Good. Then maybe moving on. So a bit back to the question, what are we managing? A short story. So a long time ago, almost 20 years ago now, I first came across the topic of time management. I was also once upon a time, I was a young consultant, a very long time ago. And I happened to meet a time management guru. He came for a training because we were all supposed to get better at time management. And it was from the US, written a few books. And what amazed me about this guy was, not only was he had a good consultancy running, he was traveling the world, he also did Ironman triathlons. And, in a lunch break, I managed to have a good conversation with him, sat down with him and say, okay, I get the time management stuff, very logical, do these things, and you get better at time management. How do you fit your triathlon training in? And he's doing 12 to 15 hours of training a week in that, with everything that you're doing. And he told me this great story that, he loved doing sports. That was for him. He wanted to be a sports player, but he was never really good enough to be, a professional sports player. And so he ended up getting a job in accounting, right? Because, he wasn't good enough to be professional sports. So, he took the second option, doing accounting. But then he realized his life without sports was driving him completely crazy to the point of burnout and quite psychological depression. And it was only when a girlfriend of him kind of kicked him out of the house and said, go and do some sports, because he was miserable, that he started exercising again. And of course, that became his release, that, he did sports, and that built up until he was doing Ironman triathlons. Well, of course, at that point, all he was doing was Ironman triathlons, and you don't make money doing that kind of stuff. So he had to find a way of managing work life with the amount of time he was putting into sport. And this is when he started researching time management. How could he manage his time? And this is where he came across this number, 1,440 minutes in a day. And he was really managing every single minute of his day, which for me was completely extreme. I mean, you go crazy if you're really trying to manage every single minute of the day, but he had it down. Amazing guy, absolutely amazing guy. And I learned a lot from him then in terms of, okay, what are we managing? We're managing self, so that's one part. Then the time element is we're managing minutes in a day. And this is very different to how our business lives are kind of constructed. Our business lives tend to be constructed in 30-minute or 60-minute blocks, because that's how people tend to set meetings up, right? So you go from one 30-minute meeting to the next 30-minute meeting to the 1 hour meeting to the half an hour for lunch to, so that's how we tend to construct our day. And his first big advice was break the 30 and 1 hour blocks down. Because when you start to do that, then you start to do crazy things like set up meetings for 25 minutes. What a crazy, sounds crazy. It will almost change your life. I mean, as crazy as it sounds, because it gives you 5 minutes free out of 30 minutes. And to be honest, you can get just as much done in the 25-minute meeting as you can in the 30-minute meeting. because often you just end up waffling to the end of the 30 minutes, right? So giving yourself 5 minutes, though, allows you to do other productive stuff in the 5-minute window, like answer the critical emails, like finish that bit of the presentation, like write up the actions from the meeting and send it back to everybody so they know what they're doing and don't forget it. So thinking in minutes rather than the way our day is constructed is one of the ways that we can really start to manage our time in the day. And, you know, if you send out meeting invites for 25 minutes or for 55 minutes, nobody complains. And really set the expectation, we have to finish 5 minutes before the hour, nobody complains. Actually, often they're quite thankful for it because then they can go get a cup of tea or a cup of coffee in the 5 minutes, right, at the end. It's amazing what you can do with those extra few minutes in the day already. So minutes, not hourly blocks, can completely change the way that you look at your calendar. Thoughts, reactions? That was a bit of a long story. I didn't mean to spend so long on that.
I'm very often involved in meetings that are scheduled for 25 or 50 minutes. All of them go beyond the scheduled time. So, I mean, it's just a tentative, but I also think that the main problem with meetings nowadays is that, I mean, you can try to come up with an agenda, but it's I don't know, it's just so difficult to get a yes or no answer, you know, and right now I'm in a project where, I mean, there's many coaches involved. And like yesterday, we were supposed to discuss, I mean, we spent half an hour in one topic and we had like 10 in the agenda. So, I mean, it's difficult to manage time when people don't give concrete answers, you know? So it's a good tentative, but it very often fails from my experience, unfortunately.
Yeah, fair point. But then that's in, so the time element is the minutes. The other element comes back to the self, right? So it's managing the self. You did it brilliantly. Actually, when you came onto the call today, just now, you did it fantastically. You said, I have a hard stop at the end of the hour. Fantastic. Because now we're going to have a hard stop at the end of the hour, right?
Yeah.
Manage it. It's that self-management bit that then kicks in. Absolutely. But you're right. You know, keeping people on time in meetings is another topic. We'll cover that in just a second. Yeah.
I realized that I have the same relationship with time that I mean, the same problem that I have with money, because I was teaching myself how to save up money, and I realized that like 1 or 2 euros or something doesn't mean much, but it adds up. And I just realized that I do the same with minutes, like 10, 15 minutes or something doesn't do much, or I don't think it is much, but I just had my mind blown that it's the same, and I think that I do with money as well. So,
and that's a great way to think about it, actually. Just like a money bank, you know, you can do a lot in 1 minute, even though it might not feel individually like it's being productive, but you add up those 30 extra little minutes that you saved during the day, and it actually can add up to quite some productivity, or it can give you a rest, a break, because that's also important. You can't work all 1,440 minutes. You also need some time off right now.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, good. So then, you know, what we're managing, we're definitely managing self. We'll come to that in step 5 on the discipline bit, and we're managing an amount of time, and it's much more beneficial to think of it as minutes rather than blocks of hours is definitely a good way to finish it. The email inbox is then the workload coming in often. So you've got these 3 dimensions now. You've got the number of minutes, time, you've got self, and then you've got capacity, like work coming in. So these are the kind of the 3 dimensions that we're managing when we talk about time management. And so often our work comes in kind of via email and or via our calendar. So these are the 2 inputs that generate often work. It can come in from other directions as well, but these are the two main ones that we have nowadays. Either people are filling our calendar or they're filling our email inbox with activities. Then we have to manage those activities and tasks. So how do we do all of that? It comes down to prioritization and then the discipline, because we only have a set amount of minutes in the day, right? Again, there's lots of good books around this. One of the books I kind of like is The 15 Secrets of Successful People. It picks out a few of the good people that manage their time. And there's some good insights in those. How to say no, for example, is a really good one in that. So let's take a look at the email piece. I was lucky enough to come across this quite early on in life. The do it, delegate it, defer it, or delete it. And in that time management training that I was on 20 odd years ago, Outlook email calendar was actually very new back then. Kind of live with it now, but it was relatively new then. And so we were shown a few hints and tips on how to set up the email inbox and the calendar to be as efficient as possible. And separating, having folders that literally have do it, delegate it, defer it, delete it can help a lot. Often who we receive the email from makes a difference. And I don't know if you know this, but you can set your email up so that if one or two people or a specific person sends you an email, it immediately pops up on your desktop, whether you like it or not, it will pop up. You know, so for me, my boss, whenever she sends me an email, it immediately pops up so that I can email her directly back, because I know if she's emailing me, then it's really urgent. And that's really useful because that always falls into the do it bucket, and often my response I can easily do within 5 minutes. Delegate it. If you have someone to delegate it to, that's great. Often, though, you know, the difficulty is you might not have somebody that you can delegate it to. Sometimes, though, you might not officially have someone to delegate it to, but there's still somebody better positioned to actually deal with the request, email, or job. And then you can forward it on saying nicely, and say, look, I could do this, but I know that you can do it much faster, or actually you have the expertise. Please, could you take a look at it for me? And often people will answer very proactively on those kind of requests. So you might not feel like you can delegate all the time, but if there is somebody that's better placed to answer the email or do the action, send it to them. No harm in asking. The worst that they can do is say no, do it yourself, right? So delegate it. Defer it. This links to the action planning and task planning. Not everything can be done quickly on the email. So taking the email, you can actually either put it directly into a task list on Outlook, or you can directly put it in your calendar. And this can be very efficient, because otherwise, as you're going through your email list, you know, you end up spending time potentially on the items that just take too long. And then you end up having to come back to it anyway. But if you immediately put it into your calendar, just even if it's like a 10-minute action, load it as a 10-minute action in your calendar, then it's planned in your diary and you don't have to stress about it. And my favorite one, of course, is delete it. The key with email, though, that I've also learned over the years is only look at your emails 3, maybe 4 times a day, which can be difficult because we build a behavior of constantly looking at our emails or our text messages. Breaking that behavior and actually saying, okay, I'm going to look at my emails when I get in. I'm going to look at them, I know it's say at 10:30. I'm going to look at them at lunch, and I'm going to look at them at the end of the day. Suddenly makes you a lot more efficient as well. Apart from those emails that I've set to pop up immediately on my desktop from really important people. You know, and that's the way I manage my email inbox. Thoughts, reactions, already doing this? Helpful?
I respond to basically all the emails, but I do sometimes, let's say, do it and delegate it. But on defer it, I usually start working as soon as I have time. Yeah, I don't put it in my calendar to follow up. I just delete what is like when somebody accepts my invite or something like this. I never delete emails because, yeah, you might always need some evidence for clients, right? So I always keep.
But there you can have a folder. I have a folder, but I literally call delete it. So I don't. I mean, some I do delete because I also get a lot of trash emails in from other places and companies. But yeah, just put it in a folder that says delete it. So you just, you have no action on it. You don't really need to answer it. Just put it in the delete folder, and then you've still got a copy if you need it in the future. Yeah, I've done that as well. Good. Any other reactions? Shall we move on to calendar? Let's go calendar. Yeah, I dare not show you my calendar because it's a right mess at this moment in time. But I do have principles built into my calendar. Again, back to the good time management practices. Space. Space is almost the most important thing in your calendar. A little bit to your point about, okay, you like to work on your emails constantly. That actually works well if you do have space in your calendar, because you can do that. Often you might end up with so many emails, so many calendar invites. If you don't have space in your calendar, you can never really get any work done. When do you have time to do that presentation or do that bit of analysis or answer your emails? Space is really important. So blocking space in calendars can again significantly change your productivity, because then you've got allocated time where you can do certain work. Back to the second point, time for action. Any of those emails that take longer than 5 minutes, put them in your calendar, time for action. This will go to the task list as well. Make sure that you have time for action. Time for emails 3 or 4 times a day, and then the rest is for meetings. This can really help if you split your calendar as best as you can into those kind of 4 blocks during the day. And again, think about the minutes, right? So, wherever you can, save yourself 5 minutes here and there, and then you can be far more productive during the day. How do you set your calendars up today? Do you give yourself any little rules? Do you use a color coding on your calendar? How do you do your calendars today? How do you manage them?
I don't really manage my calendar.
Yeah, me neither.
My calendar manages me.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's like it's getting a control over my life, Mark.
I mean, I have like most important, maybe pinned or flagged, but nothing to organize.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, I've been there as well. Sometimes my calendar manages me, and I don't manage it. But turning that around so that you are actively managing your calendar, and splitting it into these kind of 4 blocks can really make you more productive. And it's not really any effort to do that, actually. Something that, back to the books on time management and, how the best people, leaders manage their diaries. Almost all of them do this either on a Friday evening or on a Sunday evening. They really spend an hour or so, not more than an hour, 30 minutes to an hour, looking through their tasks and their calendar for the following week, blocking it into these 4 sections, like making sure they have a little bit of space, with time for action, time for clearing emails. What that half hour or an hour does in advance of the next week ends up saving them 3 or 4 hours during the week, just because they've taken the moment up front, you know, to your point, to get control of their calendar. Then that investment of half an hour to an hour will give them 3 or 4 hours back in the week. This is something I learned about 15 years ago, and it revolutionized the way that I personally worked, because that little investment, almost immediately, I saw the 3 or 4 hours benefit coming back to me within the week, just by using this simple 4 block approach and just looking on a Friday evening before I go home, or on the Sunday evening before then I plan for the following week. It also then helps take the stress away. I also found it really de-stressed me, because I was always getting up in the morning thinking, oh my God, what have I got to do today? I've got a crazy day, but I can't remember all of my meetings. I've got a bunch of tasks. I can't remember what the tasks are. It really took all of that stress away. Just this investment of half an hour to an hour up front before the week, completely gone. Does that help? Helpful? Thinking about it? Don't know if you might do it or not. Try it.
Yeah. Sorry. I have like not an issue, but now we are using like a couple of different platforms that have their own organizing systems. And Outlook was like, Outlook was not something I saw as maybe too customizable or helpful, or I don't like it actually, especially the phone app. I can't even schedule an email to be sent or something. So I just dismissed Outlook completely and the organization of the emails. But I will look into it, because honestly, I have no idea what you're talking about the calendar and like color thingies and things like that.
You can do the same in Teams now. They've got the calendar app now in Teams, but if you're using Outlook in your email, it also links to your calendar as well. So you can do the same in Teams as well now, and Teams is getting better for that kind of stuff. When it first came out a couple of years ago, it wasn't so good, but now it's actually quite good in Teams.
Yeah, I like Teams, and I use a couple of different like techniques for organization, and but never for my emails. So I will look into it for sure. Thank you.
Task management. Then it comes to the volume of work that's coming in. Absolutely, the volume of work. We have a lot of work to get through. We did look a couple of sessions ago, again, how planning, right? You know, how the different preferences also around planning. And there are different planning tools like a good old classic Gantt chart, you know, project plan, things like a mind map and these other ways of planning. So, of course, tasks and managing tasks can be very, very, you know, specific in terms of the preference in how you want to manage your tasks. Like my wife's mother is the master of lists. She literally has a list for her lists. And I'm not joking, she really has a list for her list. She's amazing at having lists. I'm terrible at having lists. They just don't work for me. But I do know but I have to get my tasks done. So linking back to the calendar and back to the email, because this is often where the tasks come from, how to manage your tasks. I think the first most important thing, back to time management, is that any task takes time. It might only be a minute, it might be an hour, it might be a whole day to complete certain tasks. But understanding that a task takes time means that you can manage it better, because often we don't even think about that and we just end up doing stuff and working. Very natural, of course. But then identifying the task, putting it in our diaries at some point, and then planning then the follow-up actions, understanding that one task will often lead to a second task or a third task is also very helpful as well. And that comes back to, we covered it again in a previous session, this idea of plan, do, check, act. So for every task that we have, even if it's 100 tasks in a week, I get about 70 emails a day, 70 to 100 emails a day. I often have anything between 12 to 20-ish tasks I need to get done in a day, specific tasks. Planning those in, so making sure I've got them in my diary, doing them, checking back the result, because often, just because you've done a task, often it does lead to a follow-up task, or you're waiting then for somebody to review something that then going to come back to you, and then seeing how you can improve how you do that task faster, better, plan it better, do it better, check it better. Is a great cycle to start building in to the way that you work. And it's a very simple: plan it, do it, check the results, see what you can improve. And this then also significantly starts to improve productivity. I'll take a pause again. Thoughts?
Yes, sometimes we think we have time for everything, and that's the misconception. So, like you say, every task takes time, and sometimes it's difficult to predict, really. I know, for example, Sarah and me, when we're doing some brainstorming ideas for like some visuals or something similar, this can go on like for hours. And I think, sometimes, especially management, doesn't really understand how long the creative process takes place even before you put anything on paper. So
yeah,
that's from my, let's say, marketing side. Yeah.
I've just seen that the transcript has been running as well. I don't know why that keeps running. Have we lost Isabella?
I think so. Maybe.
Yeah.
Bad.
Yeah, I mean, work. I mean, we're just in work all of the time. Everything keeps piling in. Sometimes it's just challenging enough just to get through the day with all of the work that's coming in. But applying, some very simple rules, can be really helpful. Kind of the slot machine email, blocking a bit the calendar with the 4 different blocks, and then just thinking that every task is going to take a bit of time, so I need to plan that in somewhere, or at least have space to do those actions somewhere. And it's at the heart of time management, effectively. How do you prioritize stuff? Getting lots of stuff in. How do you prioritize? What's your just natural way of prioritizing stuff through the day and through the week?
I mean, honestly, like what gives me the most anxiety, I postpone, and what do I do right away. But I try to select what's like the priority for the company and what needs to be done SAP and what can be postponed. And it changes, of course, during the day and during the week, especially. But there isn't like a strong system, which is in a way something that I like about the company, that it is unpredictable a lot of times.
Isabella's here. Wait.
Yeah, Isabella's back.
She's back. Sorry.
Sorry.
I remember, I think, like an inspirational quote I read like a couple of years ago that really bummed me out. And it's like, you have the same amount of hours in a day as Beyonce.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely. The same amount of minutes in a day as Beyonce, or I know Jeff Bezos, if I don't know, he's a good role model, but you know, same minutes in the day as everybody else. And often people at that level have really worked out how to use the minutes in the day, what to delegate. Of course, they're in the great situation. They have enough money that they can delegate a lot of work, right?
Yeah. But they value time, like that's the perfect example of their time must be valued. Like every minute of Beyonce's day must be well planned for sure.
Absolutely, but every minute of our day is very valuable as well. It's what you do with it, right? So yeah, I mean, absolutely. So prioritization, you know, often we have an automatic way of prioritizing stuff. We don't really think about it oftenly, prioritizing. And, you know, you don't have to consciously prioritize everything, not at all. There is this very old person, a long, long time ago, called Pareto, you know, very famously the 80-20 rule. I don't know if you've come across that before, but it's widely used, but it's also widely misunderstood. Most companies think the 80-20 rule is, we'll do something to 80%, and that's good enough. That's not the 80-20 rule at all. And I've actually done a lot of statistics on this and found that actually, yeah, it's right. 80% of the results come from just 20% of your actions. And, you know, you most probably feel it in the day. You know, you'll do a few actions, they have a big impact. And then the rest of the day, you're doing lots of work, but they have very little impact. Right? The one that gets me the most in corporate life, I don't know if you deal with this so often, but I see it a lot in corporate life. The effort that goes into preparing PowerPoint slides for steering committees, I'm sure Isabella is living this one, is huge. I mean, you know, to put together a 20-page presentation for a steering committee takes 2 weeks, hundreds of meetings, you know, 20, 30 reviews until you've, you know, got the presentation, everybody's happy with it. You present it in a 1-hour steering board. That presentation is immediately forgotten about after the steering committee, right? That's where, you know, 80% of our work results in nothing. But it's the 20% of our actions result in 80% of the results. Thinking like that can help with prioritization. Then in a very simple matrix, you can easily draw this on a piece of paper. I used to have Post-it notes printed with this, actually. It was very useful to have a Post-it note printed with it. For the list of actions you've got for the following week, literally just very quickly on a little table, right? Impact, high to low. Effort, high to low. And then just quickly, you know, draw the actions on your little prioritization grid. Very quickly, you can work out which of those actions take a huge amount of effort but have low impact, leave it until last, versus which of those actions have a high impact but take a very little amount of effort. Focus on those first, and again, you can get much better results. Because often the low impact ones, people tend to forget about anyway. If it's not having a big impact, they'll forget it after a week if you haven't done it. But of course, the ones that have the big impact, low effort, they're the ones to chase down first. And that's applying then the Pareto rule of 80-20. Make sense?
Yes, I love that. I'm gonna start writing impact. And because it also gives you more level of satisfaction, like at the end of it.
Absolutely. And this was another trick I learned, luckily, early on. Often when we write our tasks down, we write a list that goes down the page. 1 task, 2nd task, 3rd task, 4th, and so on and so on. Sometimes we might give it a priority, high, medium, low kind of thing. Rather than writing your tasks down on a list, write it on the grid. It's still the task list, but you're doing it in 2 dimensions rather than just a list of tasks. And suddenly it transforms your way that you think about your tasks so that you're focusing on the priority tasks first that have the highest impact, and take the lowest effort. And then you're working downwards towards those ones, high effort, very low impact. And suddenly you've got a much more useful list than just a list of tasks. Super useful. Try it out. It's good fun. And all the material for this will be in the presentation I send after the training. Last thing then is on discipline. We talked about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Great to get used to that. Building behaviors. There's a lot of psychology around this as well. I'm not going to go into it now. The best thing to do is once you've done something that you've not done before, which is a benefit, which is a good behavior, like trying to block your calendar for a week with those 4 different kind of blocks, give yourself a reward, whether it's have that extra glass of wine in the evening, or whether it's going to give yourself a 5-minute break to go and have a cup of coffee, or whether it is treating yourself to a new handbag or dress, or whatever reward you want. Reward yourself. It's the best way of building new behaviors and new discipline. All of the psychology is built around, we do the things that we like to get rewarded for, right? So reward yourself. Often we never reward us. We work hard in the week, and then we don't, at the end of the week, sit back and go, oh, okay, I deserve a reward now. Apart from the extra glass of wine, which is the usual reward at the end of the week. But, reward yourself. The best way to build new behaviors and disciplines, go reward yourself.
I wish I rewarded myself less, Mark.
Really?
And then I could save more money. And sometimes I wish I did not reward myself for the bad things I do, Sometimes I reward myself for not getting the task done to inspire myself to get it done. So it's really psychological, but thank you for the advice. But in my case, I need to reward myself less.
Very good. I like that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Agreed. I don't think I have a trouble with rewards as well. Hedonistic approach, like at the end of the day. But I've read somewhere why do we have issues with food, and especially desserts and sugars, because when we were younger, desserts and sweets were always a reward.
Yeah.
Now you also look at them that way, and it's psychologically somehow everything is connected.
Yeah, so even when I don't get the task done, I'm like, no, I'll just reward myself, and then maybe I'll be more inspired to get the task done.
I think there's a deeper change in behavior here that we don't have time to cover now.
I think, psychological,
When I was studying medicine, we did a thing when you had to read 50 or 100 pages in a day. And then after 10 pages, you put a cookie or something in the book. So 10 pages and a cookie, 10 pages and then another cookie. Basically Pavlov dog yourself or something.
Right?
Works, yeah.
Very good. Good. Any other questions before we close?
Oh, it was a fun training session.
Yeah.
Then enjoy, therefore, managing your time. I'm sure you'll become amazing time management experts going forward. Every little moment helps. So with that, then, have the most fantastic weekend. Thank you very much for joining today, and I'll send the materials out afterwards. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Mark. Have a great weekend.
Go out and reward yourself, everybody.
I will.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye.